Welcome to the Frontier. In this video, I'll explain some of the key features of the board game Farmstead, set the scene, goal, and gameplay, then go over the rules for those of you that hate reading. Farmstead can be played with 1 to 8 players. That's right, you can play solo or with more people than you can sit comfortably around a dining room table. It's a simultaneous play game, so all players decide what actions they'll take at the same time, so it plays quickly even with a crowd. In Farmstead, you live in a small farming community with your fellow players. There is barely a village when you start, and life is tough. But through hard work, smart decisions, and a little help from your fellow players, you can survive, build up your farmstead, and if you really prosper, get your name on the deed of a few buildings in the now burgeoning town. The goal is to earn the most victory points by the end of the game. Victory points are collected by buying fields, tools, and buildings, saving money, adding rooms to your house, and receiving victory point tokens, positive ones for feeding others, negative ones for not being able to feed your own workers. To set up, place the central strip in the middle. Place the small tools, with a blue background, face up next to it. Leave room for the large tools and buildings. Place the forage card next to these. The side with one spot per resource type is for 1 to 4 players. The other side is for 5 to 8 players. Populate the forage card with the resources shown on it. Place a $1 bill under the bottom edge for each $sign on the card. In field order, that is wheat, garden, pasture, then orchard, take 1 field card per player, shuffle them face down, and deal 1 to each player, who then reveals their card. The youngest player with a wheat field starts with the mayor token. Give each player a personal action strip and a screen. 4 workers of a single color, a house token of the same color as their workers, 2 resources of their choice, $12. Players should place their house token on the leftmost room of the house on the action strip, their field below the action strip, and the other items to the side. Place the orange season marker on the first season circle on the central strip. Take the number of additional field cards according to the table in the rulebook. Shuffle these cards and place them face down near the central strip and turn over the top card. In a 5 to 8 player game, turn over the top 2 cards. A game of Farmstead is made up of 3 years, each consisting of 4 seasons. The first year you have 2 workers, the second year you have 3 workers, and the third year you have 4 workers. Each season you assign your workers to 1 of 6 actions. At the end of each year, you must have enough food to feed your workers. You need 1 fruit or vegetable, 1 grain, and 1 protein per worker. Each season, players place their screen in front of their action strip while they assign their workers' actions. Players may place workers on 1 of their own fields, tools with a worker spot, or 1 of the 5 actions on their action strip. Once everyone has placed their workers, players remove their screen to reveal their choices. The mayor then announces each action in order. Players with workers assigned to those actions execute the action and set their workers aside. Once all the actions are complete, pass the mayor token to the next player in clockwise order. If a field is unsold, place a $1 bill under it. This corresponds to a $1 discount off the minimum bid. If a field sold, turn up a new field. Replace resources on the forage card. Move the season marker forward 1 season. If moving into a new year, follow the year-end instructions I will get to in a moment. Each worker may be assigned to 1 of the following actions, which are executed in this order. 1. Work the land. 2. Trade. 3. Farm raising. 4. Sell resources. 5. Bid on new fields or buy tools and buildings. 6. Forage for resources. Players may assign workers to work the land by placing each of these workers on the field or tool corresponding to the action the player wishes them to take. During the work action phase, if a player placed a worker on a garden or wheat field that has resources on it from a previous season, the player harvests those resources into their personal supply. If the field has no resources on it, the player plants the field by placing the number and type of resource indicated by the field card onto the card. Note, players can harvest and then plant in the same season by placing 2 workers on the field. However, they cannot plant then harvest in the same season. Players may harvest from an orchard or pasture by placing a worker on it and collecting the number and type of resources indicated on the field card into their personal supply during the work action phase. These field types may only be harvested in summer and fall. Only 1 worker may be placed on each orchard or pasture. There are bonus resources for planting or harvesting in certain seasons, which I will get to in a moment. All players who have assigned a worker to trade may trade with each other. Harvested resources, tools, buildings, and money may be traded. Fields, points, workers, and unharvested resources may not be traded. Players can negotiate or agree to trade ahead of placing their workers, and then choose the trade action to execute the trade. However, advanced agreements are not binding. There is no limit to the number of trades a player may make in a season with a single worker. Players may also trade resources with the central supply at a rate of 2 of their resources for 1. They can use $1 as a resource for this purpose. Players may assign 1 or more workers to farm raising. The mayor places the assigned workers in the blue draw bag. Of the participating players, those owning the smallest farmhouse may add another worker to the draw bag. The mayor draws 1 worker. The player represented by the drawn worker moves their house marker to the right by 1 room for each other worker sent, not counting the extra workers added. This player then selects a resource type and gives 1 of that resource from the central supply to each player for each worker they sent, again not counting the extra workers added. If only 1 worker is assigned to farm raising, the player represented by that worker simply adds 1 room to their house. Players receive bonuses from certain rooms as their house expands. Players may assign a worker or workers to sell resources. Each worker may sell up to 2 resources. Grain, vegetables, and fruit can be sold in any combination. Protein cannot be sold. The price per resource is determined according to the table in your rulebook. The price varies between $3 and $1 per resource. For example, in a 5-player game, if there are 4 workers selling, players will receive $2 per resource. Players may assign 1 or more workers to the bid-buy action. Each worker may either purchase 1 field or buy 1 tool or building. Bidding on fields takes place before buying tools and buildings. Unsuccessful bidders may still buy tools or buildings. Bidding proceeds clockwise, starting with the mayor. Each player with a worker on this action may bid or pass. If there are 2 fields available, the first bidder selects which field to be auctioned first. The minimum bid price is $10 minus any money under the field card. Once a player passes, they may not bid again on the same field this season. The highest bidder pays the bid price into the central supply and places the field below their action strip. They do not get the money, if any, under the field card. After bidding on fields is complete, players may buy 1 item per remaining worker assigned to this action. Prices are indicated on the top left of each card. Buying begins with the mayor and moves clockwise. Each player may purchase 1 item at a time on behalf of an assigned worker until no players have any buying workers remaining. In the first year, only basic tools, $4 or less, are available. In the second year, the remaining tools become available, those priced at $8 or less. In the third year, town buildings, priced at $9, become available. Tools give the player owning them abilities or exceptions to the rules not available to other players. Buildings give players bonus points depending on what their neighbors, that is those sitting directly to their left or right, or all the other players have at the end of the game. Tools or buildings bought in the summer cost $1 less. Players may assign 1 or more workers to forage for resources. Each worker can forage for 1 item. Each season there are 1 vegetable, 1 fruit, 1 grain, 1 protein, and $1 available. There are 2 of each if there are 5 to 8 players. Foraging starts with the player to the right of the mayor and moves counterclockwise. Each player takes 1 of these 5 items on behalf of a worker of theirs, until there are no more resources or no more foraging workers, whichever comes first. There are advantages to taking certain actions during certain seasons. If planting a field in spring, players place 1 extra resource of the type they are planting on that field. If buying tools and buildings in the summer, players take $1 off the price. If harvesting a garden, orchard, or wheat field in fall, players take 1 additional resource of that type into their personal supply. If selling resources in the winter, players add $1 per resource type to the total they receive. When a year comes to an end, there are a number of things that need to happen. First, take back all vitality and adversity cards and shuffle them in with the others of the same type. At the end of every year, each player consumes 1 fruit or vegetable, 1 grain, and 1 protein per worker. If a player's workers consume at least one fruit and at least one vegetable in total, that player gets a vitality card. Vitality cards are drawn in clockwise order starting with the mayor. Players should read the card aloud and place it face up in front of their action strip for the rest of the year or until they use the card, whichever comes first. Vitality cards earned at the end of the third year are each worth 1 point. If a player does not have enough resources to feed their workers, that player receives a -1 point shame token for each missing resource. After this, other players can give that player the needed resource and receive a +1 point charity token from the central supply. The resource given is immediately consumed and returned to the central supply. If multiple players offer the same resource, the needy player can choose who to accept from. If a resource is needed and it is offered, the player must accept. For each resource a player is still missing, they must take an adversity card. Players draw one adversity card at a time in clockwise order, starting with the mayor, until all players have the number of cards required, or there are no more cards. Players read the card aloud and place it face up in front of their action strip for the rest of the year, or until it has taken effect. Adversity cards acquired at the end of the third year each count as -1 point. Any fruit, vegetable, or protein in a player's supply spoils and must be returned. Grain does not spoil. After the first year, display the large tools. After the second year, display the buildings. The game ends after 3 years. Each player evaluates their farmstead as follows to calculate their score. Add all the victory points from fields, tools, and buildings, both the amount in the icon on the top right of the card and the bonuses from buildings. Add 1 point for each farmhouse room. Add 1 point for each charity token or vitality card. Subtract 1 point for each shame token or adversity card. Add 1 point for every $3. The player with the most total victory points wins. If players share the same total points, they tie. There are a number of minor changes for the one-player version of the game, which you can read about in the rules.